Hello and welcome to the NESN Soccer Show. I'm Mark, you're Marcus, and we're sitting here hoping that somehow, some way, the USA will still qualify for the World Cup. But I don't think it's possible. But there are 9 spots still available, Marcus, and 20 countries gunning for them all over the world. Matches taking place, I think, on every continent except for Antarctica. Maybe there's one there
might
too.
Be some games, yeah.
You never know. There's soccer everywhere. Worldwide sport. But yeah, we want to jump right into the qualifying playoffs. We're going to start in Europe, UEFA. I would think the biggest matchup, the biggest name is Italy, still in the knockout or in the playoffs. But a couple matches already took place, the first legs. Northern Ireland versus Switzerland played yesterday. We're shooting on Friday, so played on Thursday. And Switzerland won that matchup 1-0 in Northern Ireland. I was watching that match, and Northern Ireland got a tough call in the box, resulting in a penalty kick. The call was a handball, but the Northern Ireland defender jumped and moved his whole body. And when he first jumped, his arm was out, but he brings it in, and it hits off of his back shoulder and ricochets away, and the referee grants a penalty kick. And they just totally got screwed because they were playing a very defensive game. We're kind of playing for a draw, it seemed like, 0-0. And it's just a bad call. And that's a rough way to go in World Cup qualifying.
I only have one question. Why didn't Northern Ireland score at home?
I don't know. Maybe they were hoping for,
Those are the games you have to get your goals, and they didn't get one. I didn't see the game myself, but got to score at home.
Yeah, maybe they were going for a full 0-0 through.
And then eke one out on the road.
Yeah, something like that. But their second leg will be Sunday at noon Eastern in Switzerland. So tall order for them. Have to, I guess, at least win 1-0 to force extra time.
Yeah.
So maybe bye-bye Northern Ireland, because I don't think they're going to pull that off.
Still too tough to call right now, but they've got 1 foot in the grave. So,
a team with maybe 2 feet in the grave is Greece.
Right.
They performed terribly against Croatia. Terrible defense, bad goalkeeping. Lost 4-1 in the first leg on Thursday. This was in Croatia, so they come home. They have an away goal. So a 3-0 victory puts them into the World Cup, but they really did not play well in this match and dug themselves, I think, too big of a hole to get out of, because Croatia is a formidable side.
Yeah. Greece isn't winning 3-0.
Yeah.
Maybe if they play 270 minutes, they can get those 3. Bye-bye, Greece.
Yeah, see ya. And let's jump to Denmark and Ireland before we talk about Italy, Switzerland. But their first leg, they play on Saturday at 2:45 in Denmark. Then second leg on Tuesday at 2:45 in Ireland. I'm pulling for Ireland here because I'm sure a lot of people remember at the Euros, their fans are just the best.
Yeah.
And if we can't have Northern Ireland, let's at least get Ireland in there.
All right.
So, beyond that, I think it's relatively an even matchup.
Yeah, that could go either way. I might even shade for Ireland being favored in this one. Not for any particular reason other than got a little bit of that Euro experience. They're kind of a battle-hardened group, and their coach, Martin O'Neill, is one of the best.
All right. And then, the biggest matchup of the weekend, I would say, across the world, is Sweden versus Italy. Italian players all across Europe have been in the press all week with different quotes and phrases and how they have to qualify and the ultimate failure that it would be if they didn't. Sweden is no slouch, though. First leg is Friday, 2:45 Eastern. Second leg is Monday, 2:45 Eastern. First leg in Sweden, second leg in Italy. I would expect Italy to be able to take care of business, especially given the clear focus and seriousness of all the players They've called in their top roster, obviously, and I think they should be able to overmatch Sweden.
What is Italy doing in the World Cup playoffs? That's what I keep asking. You know, we would expect Italy to beat Sweden. We would not expect Italy to be in this situation. I know they were in a tough group.
Yeah, they were
with Spain, but yeah, I mean, I have a feeling Italy will get this done. There's enough know-how and there's still some talent. This isn't the best Italy. No, this is one of the worst Italy teams talent-wise.
And they're also a little old.
And they are also a little bit older. But
yeah,
I would expect them to work this out. You know, I think with another draw in the World Cup qualifying in their UEFA group, they would have coasted through. But just having Spain there, I know they laid an egg when they went to Spain, and it really came down to those two teams. So
yeah.
But more interesting was yesterday there was talk of Zlatan Ibrahimovic coming back. He retired from international duty after the last round of Euro qualifiers, and you know, people were saying, hey, maybe Ibra might come back if Sweden makes the World Cup. Well, he came out today and said, no, I'm done.
Yeah.
Even if they make the World Cup, they play with less pressure when he's not there. So there will be no Ibra in this World Cup, and I don't think Sweden will be there either.
That would be okay with me. Moving on to the Interconfederation playoffs, CONCACAF taking on AFC, Honduras versus Australia. First leg is Friday at 5 o'clock Eastern. Second leg, I know you'll be up for this, is Wednesday, 4 a.m. Eastern in Australia. I think this could actually be sneakily, just as far as the actual games go, maybe the most exciting matchup.
Yeah, I think this one is the most evenly matched in terms of the quality of the teams. Neither of them are excellent teams, but I think they match up well. Both will be fast, physical type of game, and it also could go either way. You know, we're not sure. There are some injuries. Tim Cahill has he's the Australian hero of all time. He has an ankle problem that he suffered just last week during domestic play. So he's in a race for fitness. Honduras has a couple suspensions that they're dealing with. Australia has a couple suspensions. So this one is really tough to call because two teams that on another year you would expect them both to be in the World Cup, but they just happen to have to go through this playoff round.
It was a hectic road for Honduras to end up in this playoff, as Americans know, getting eliminated sort of all in one half of qualifying in the final day of the Hex. So I guess I'm pulling for Honduras here as a CONCACAF club. I think that they deserve to make the World Cup. In Australia, I think they've had stronger sides in the past.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wouldn't feel so bad if this side didn't make it. I also would like the second leg being in Australia, I think is almost a disadvantage for Australia because they travel so far to get to Honduras and then go back to Australia, whereas I think a lot of the Honduras players don't have to do that literally around the world trip twice.
Right.
They only do it once.
5 days.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that'll be really tough physically for the Australians.
Yeah. I don't know how long that flight is, but it's a good one.
It's long.
Yeah. Okay, and then New Zealand versus Peru. I'd take Peru in this, I think. But first leg is Saturday, 10:15 Eastern. Second leg is Wednesday, 9:15 Eastern.
Wow.
That second leg will be the last World Cup qualifying match of Russia 2018. So after that match, we will have the field of teams set. So close.
That'll be Wednesday night. So
Thursday
morning when we wake up, the
we'll
whole
know.
Field will be set finally.
We'll know.
I like Peru in this matchup. They'll be without their talisman and goal-scoring hero Paulo Guerrero. He failed a drugs test, I think, in the last round of games. So we're not sure what his ban or suspension will be, but fairly certain he's not going to play against New Zealand. That being said, I think Peru's got enough to get past New Zealand.
Yeah.
Because just going through that meat grinder, that's the
CONMEBOL.
CONMEBOL
It's a league in
qualifying.
itself.
Yeah, and New Zealand just sort of coasted by Micronesia and Palau and teams like that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think they'll be able to raise their game enough to really go toe to toe with Peru.
Yeah, that last day of CONMEBOL qualifying was almost as good as CONCACAF, with Argentina sneaking past the playoff position and Purdue ending up there.
Yeah.
But okay, so we move on to Africa. It's not a playoff; it's just the last day of World Cup qualifying matches.
Right.
And a lot going on. So there are 8 countries that can qualify for 3 different spots. It's separated into groups of 4 teams. We'll start with Group A, which is kind of the most straightforward. Tunisia has 13 points. Democratic Republic of Congo has 10 points. And they both play separate teams. So Congo needs to win their match. Tunisia needs to lose theirs. And then the Congo needs to win by more than 2 goals,
right,
to cover up the goal differential. See what happens there. I don't know too much about these 2 sides. I don't know.
Neither do I, but I know both of them are going up against either Guinea or Libya, who have 3 points from 5 games, already eliminated, just hopeless throughout this qualifying. So it's Tunisia's to blow. If they don't get at least a point against Libya or Guinea, opens the door for Congo.
So Group B, Nigeria qualified. Good for them.
Already through.
Group C, Morocco leads the Ivory Coast by 1 point in the group. Those are the only 2 group teams left in the group that could qualify. And they play each other. So they play on Saturday, November 11th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Basically, Ivory Coast must win to advance. A tie does not advance them. A tie puts Morocco through.
That'll be a great game to watch.
Fantastic game. I think we mentioned Honduras, Australia's sneaky best game. This also is kind of right up there. So definitely looking forward to that. Group D, things get really interesting. Just to start at the most simple, all 4 teams in the group could still qualify technically, mathematically. South Africa is in 4th place in the group. Senegal is in 1st. But Senegal and South Africa play each other twice. And the reason they play each other twice, when all the other teams in Africa are only playing 1 match on this match day, is because their match on November 12th, 2016, was annulled. That match was a 2-1 victory to South Africa. But it was wiped off the board because on September 6, 2017, the referee of that match was banned from FIFA. After, quote, unlawfully influencing the match. Basically, I guess, to put in simple terms, he probably took money of some kind to influence the match in South Africa's favor.
Wow.
South Africa won the match 2-1. Now they're replaying that match. So, yeah, it should all come down to Senegal versus South Africa. And these 2 matches, South Africa basically needs to win both. And if they do that, they would advance because Burkina Faso and Cape Verde are both on 6 points.
Playing each other. Right.
So South Africa wins both, they advance. Senegal ties 1. They probably would still advance on goal differential. So yeah, kind of all comes down versus the 2 matches versus
one
Senegal
draw will get them through.
and South Africa.
You know, listening to this story about the referee Joseph Lamptey, who for some reason his name rings a bell. I think he might have mucked up a World Cup game in 2014 or 2010. But you know, looking at all this and how I think FIFA justice works in this. You know, you have to
in this example,
as long as they're policing things on the field and not policing themselves in the corridors of power. Bravo to FIFA. Well, way to go. FIFA gets a bad rap just about everywhere, but if they have proof and evidence that a referee was taking money to change a game,
Yeah.
you have to annul the game and play it over. So good for them.
Yeah.
And the Court of Arbitration for Sport has backed FIFA's process. So there's hope in this world.
There is hope. Senegal and South Africa play today, Friday, the 10th of November, and then also on the 14th.
Wow.
So keep track of that. And then Group E, Egypt qualified. So Egypt and Nigeria have qualified out of Africa. But that is the Africa side of things.
And congrats to Egypt, because it's been almost 4 decades.
And they've been a really good squad.
They have
basically that whole time,
then.
or not the whole time, but very recently, and even like the last 10 years, they've been a really good team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just before we move on from World Cup qualifying, what may be an overarching theme or thing or whatever from just qualifying that you've really enjoyed this cycle, or just what you're looking forward to most this weekend?
It's the flattening of the earth. All these teams that aren't the superpowers, most of them have reached a point in their development where they can compete, and they don't always go out and play open, free-flowing soccer, not always the most entertaining way, but among these teams that are below the superpowers, you can get a lot of good games, and a lot of competitive players from all over the world are playing against each other in Europe, and it's not like each team is in their own little worlds and then they meet up in these FIFA World Cup qualifiers. There's so much movement of players and coaches and teams and styles. It's all kind of coming together, and there's been a great leveling of the field, at least in this cycle. It's been really interesting to watch, and making predictions and bets and things like that are really tough now, because it's all about how teams are doing on that day, and not so much the name on the front of the jersey. That sometimes Sweden walks into Italy, you expect Italy to win, but it's not a good example. But take a Denmark-Ireland.
Sure, yeah.
It's really just you have to know who's playing well, who's in form, and it all comes down to who performs.
I think that's a great point. I think we sort of saw it on the focus scale in the Euros last year with the certain teams that made it to the quarters and the semifinals.
We saw it in the World Cup as well, where once you got to the knockout rounds, all these games became tight. They became cagey, a lot of 1-0s, 1-1s, penalty kicks.
Yeah.
And this is a larger trend that started, really 8, 9, 10 years ago, where a lot of teams are, they're leveling out, and all these built-in advantages that a lot of countries had in the past, I think they're gone.
Yeah, and it's just kind of a great argument for expanding the World Cup, which is that officially happening?
It's happening.
Yeah, 2026.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, by this time next week, we'll know all the teams in the World Cup. The United States will not be there. It won't take away from my interest. I know it will take away from a lot of people's interest in the United States, but I'm very excited. I'm very excited for this weekend. As you walked in, you've been sick the last couple days, and I'm hey Marcus.
I'm like leaving the Marcus.
All right, but moving back to the United States, a couple big stories. We'll start with Brad Friedel being hired as New England Revolution head coach, our local club.
Yep.
He doesn't have much prior history with the Revs, but a ton of experience in the Premier League. And my first question for you is, does that experience help him as an MLS head coach? This is his first head coaching job.
I don't know. His playing experience should help him, because a lot of what the Revolution touted when they announced this hire was that Brad Friedel's a winner and he commands respect.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be, he played more Premier League games than any American, and he set records for most consecutive starts, started maybe 8, 9, 10 years in a row.
That's pretty nuts.
I mean, as a player,
even just as a goalie,
right. As an American player, his resume is arguably unmatched for anyone. Now, his coaching training has been very good as well. He has a UEFA Pro license, which is the highest. It's the highest level of qualification you can have in Europe. So, in terms of X's and O's, he should know what he's doing. But it'll really come down to man management. How do you get these guys who are the Revolution don't have a. It's not the youngest team. It's not the oldest team, but maybe they skew a little younger. Can you get these guys to be to start improving again, game in, game out, year in, year out, because there's been some stagnation within the roster and the players. One potential pitfall I see is in recruitment and building a roster.
Yeah.
Brad Friedel has lots of contacts in and around the American game, but he spent 23 years as a professional. I think all but 2 or 3 of them were spent outside of the United States.
Yeah.
So how well does he connect with American players and really, know what drives them and what motivates them? It'll be interesting to see, and it's how well he'll do. I don't know. At this point, he hasn't even been introduced to the press, so we don't have many hints. But this is his first coaching job, and first coaching job at a club. So. It'll be kind of a petri dish, but in terms of the qualifications, he's worked with great coaches in the past, and he's learned from some of them. We'll see how well that translates to MLS.
Here's an interesting question that just popped into my head: is how much is this? And I'm not saying like just a 1 or 2 year thing, but how much is this a stepping stone job for him, and that he may be sort of gunning for USA men's national team head coach, not for the 2022 World Cup, but maybe 2026, and with some MLS experience in addition to his player experience. Is that something you can see for Brad Friedel in the future? I mean, he's just starting out as a head coach, so it's hard to even speculate. But you think that's on his mind? It's something he wants?
Yeah, there's got to be a larger ambition.
Yeah.
When he started out as a coach, I don't think Brad Friedel woke up every day and said, I dream of coaching the New England Revolution. And that's no disrespect to the Revolution, but somebody of his pedigree as a player and somebody who's worked in the national team system. I think he was the coach of the under-18 team. Somebody who's been in the federation, and he has connections in Europe. We haven't had an American have a long stint as a Premier League manager. So maybe that's something he has his eyes on.
Yeah.
We're not sure yet. He hasn't spoken to the media about it yet. But he's somebody who, given his resume as a player and given his qualifications as a coach, can go as far as his ambition and ability takes him.
Right. Well, I think it's an exciting move for the Revs because Brad Friedel's a pretty big name in U.S. soccer.
Yeah, when Jay Heaps was let go in September, I wouldn't have expected Brad Friedel would be coming in. I thought it would be an MLS retread coach, somebody we'd seen somewhere else that comes in, has a strong interview, and gets a shot. But it's a little bit outside of the box thinking for the Revolution, and I like it.
Yeah. Okay, so our final story is Robbie Rogers retires.
Yeah.
Which is significant because he was the only openly gay American athlete in professional sports in the sports leagues.
Right.
So just for that reason, it's a pretty significant thing. He had a long MLS career, a very good MLS career, not so much with the U.S. National team, but he won an MLS Cup, maybe more than one. But yeah, any reaction to this story?
Yeah, it was. I remember the story when he came out. He was playing in England. Or let me backtrack a little. Robbie Rogers was very highly touted as a young player. When he was a teenager, I think he went over to the Netherlands, played over there, and it seemed like his career was going to be going up to the top. And then when he got to England, it sort of stalled. He was at Leeds, and then he went on loan to a couple clubs that were in lower leagues, maybe 4th division, 3rd division, and he was playing there, but he didn't seem to be flourishing. And then in 2013, all of a sudden, he came out of the closet and retired on the same day.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. I was covering that story where the main thing was that he felt at the time that being in the closet, he couldn't come out of the closet while playing in England. And I think he felt he couldn't be out of the closet and playing anywhere at the time.
Yeah.
Well, the reaction in 2013 over in the United States was almost like an embrace of Robbie Rogers.
Yeah.
And he came back, and Bruce Arena and some others convinced him to come out of retirement. And I think after his first game, it stopped being a story. The fact that he was gay. It was just Robbie Rogers is playing in MLS and he's gay. And I never really thought twice about it until he retired yesterday.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, Robbie Rogers retired, and he was the first gay athlete, gay, in the major professional sports leagues in America. But the enduring lesson for me was that he felt, and this is like any discrimination that exists, is that it limits human potential.
Sure.
And he couldn't reach his potential, and this is why even FIFA and MLS and all these leagues are coming out against discrimination in all forms, because imagine the talent that's lost.
Yeah.
Robbie Rogers was about 25, 26 years old when he said, "That's it, I've had enough," and he wanted to live his own truth, and he didn't feel like he could do that certainly in European and English soccer.
Right.
But kudos to the Galaxy and MLS and the U.S. soccer for being able to provide this platform where he says he can be himself and play to his ability, and he was a champion 2014.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well said, Marcus. I got nothing to add to that. But we totally skipped over the USA Soccer roster versus Portugal.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I apologize to our producer, Keely, who must be a little thrown off. But yeah, I mean, maybe we skipped over it because it's kind of a insignificant match.
Yeah.
But it is significant in the sense that there are a lot of young U.S. players into the club, and sort of out with the old, in with the new. Also, John Brooks is on the roster, which was a little surprising.
Yeah, he's back earlier than I expected.
But I think the biggest name is Weston McKennie. If you haven't heard his name yet, get used to it. You'll be hearing it a lot. But also Josh Sargent, John Brooks, obviously, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Yedlin's in the roster, Kellen Rowe, friend of the NESN Soccer Show, on the roster, Juan Agudelo on the roster. What are your biggest takeaways? Ethan Horvath.
The biggest takeaways, well, the first name that jumped out for me was Josh Sargent.
Mm-hmm.
He has become the first player. Josh Sargent isn't even a professional player yet. He turns 18 in February, and on his birthday, he's going to sign with Werder Bremen in Germany. He's the first player that's ever been on the U17, U20, and senior national team in the same calendar year, which is amazing. And it says something about his ability now and his potential, that he could be on the senior national team from age 18 on. You know, we've seen a lot of young players be in and out over the years, but from what I've seen from his game, I've seen him play a couple youth international tournaments. He looks like he's really special as a goal scorer, and that's something the U.S. hasn't always had, which is somebody who is a clinical finisher, and when they get that ball near the box, you know, you lean forward a little bit in your chair and it might go in. But this roster, it's kind of it's nothing close to what an A team would be, because players that are still involved in MLS playoffs are called up. Bobby Wood, Christian Pulisic, Coach Dave Sarakin left them at home.
Give them a rest.
Yeah, gave them some rest. The game against Portugal, you know, it's a friendly, it's meaningless.
And we don't know what kind of roster Portugal is going to come out with, do we?
Well, Ronaldo's not there, so you know, that kind of tells you how important this game is to them. But for the U.S. players, it'll give them a real chance to just make a name for themselves and make an impression on whoever's left over at the Federation after this current coaching crop leaves in December, and there might be new leadership in February when they have the presidential election.
Yeah, I would expect from this game probably like 2 goalkeepers, 1 for each half.
Yeah.
What's really Yedlin's on the roster. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he didn't even play, just because he might want to get a rest as well. But I think the biggest thing for me is when we've been so excited about Christian Pulisic in the last year, but these are sort of the names that you'll see alongside Pulisic in the World Cups to come, and maybe the next, I want to say next 2, maybe even next 3. And it's sort of, we've talked in the past about how the U.S. had a sort of gap of maybe 6 years or so where they didn't develop any really good players, and players like Michael Bradley and Clint Dempsey were still on the roster and still good players, but the fact that nobody had forced them out is really concerning. And I think these are guys that if they were a few years older would have forced them out, but they are the age that they are, and they'll come in as those guys go out kind of with no real controversy, I would think, and these are the guys you're going to see. And it's their first chance to really prove themselves. But my final thought is John Brooks on the roster.
Yeah.
I was just surprised. I thought his injury would have kept him out.
I was surprised to see him back playing for Wolfsburg now.
It was supposed to be a much longer recovery.
Yeah. I didn't think he would be back until December in the Bundesliga, but he's back, and it's a shame because if John Brooks is healthy, the United States qualifies for the World Cup.
They're there for sure. Yeah.
There are names on this list that you can get really excited about. We've talked about Sargent. Tyler Adams is another one. Plays for New York Red Bulls. Very versatile, very athletic, very intelligent, and he's only 18. From what I've seen from him, he can go far. There are players on this roster that the sky is the limit for them, and it all depends on, a Weston McKennie falls into that category. These guys are playing first team games as teenagers, which when you see that, then you can start to say, what'll they be like at 22?
They're not that far behind a Christian Pulisic as far as potential as a professional. I mean,
well, the only difference is that Pulisic has done it and is doing it week in, week out.
They can be at that level, by the time they're 20 or so. Albeit Pulisic was at that level when he was 17, 18.
Yeah, maybe not 20, but 24.
Okay,
you
sure.
Never know.
We'll agree to disagree.
Okay.
All right. Well, all right. So do you have a final word? You were looking at something earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
The final word, Andrea Pirlo, retired, played his last game. I think it was last weekend. And on Monday, he announced his retirement. What a player.
Yeah.
It was, I remember a great quote I heard about him. He plays as if he's smoking a cigar and drinking a glass of wine and strolling around the midfield. But one of my favorite players to watch, just a genius, and what they call him, the maestro.
Yeah. If you look through any sort of quotes about Pirlo, you'll see some incredible names quoting him, or not quoting him, but singing his praises, and just what an honor it was to play with him. The game will miss him, but I will be with him watching Italy versus Sweden today. I'm sure
one of my favorite things about Pirlo is that he played for AC Milan, Inter Milan, and Juventus, among other teams. And nobody, in terms of the fans and the people at the club, have a bad word to say about him. There's never anything about being a traitor or a turncoat. It's just he came there and they love him, and then he goes to the big rival, and then they love him. And it's rare to see a player as appreciated as Pirlo. And all those teams, when he was on those clubs, were near the top, if not at the top of the league. So thanks for joining us this week. Farewell to Pirlo. Ciao. Ciao. But it's 11:56. The South Africa versus Senegal, we'll call it the first leg. World Cup qualifier begins at noon. So thanks for joining us. And we'll be back next week to talk about the teams that have qualified and whatever else has come up in the world of soccer. So thank you for joining us. Give them what they want me, come to give them.